Do you ever struggle with being faithful with your devotional life, with your time with God? Do you find it dry and you you have a hard time being faithful with it? Or maybe you were doing great, you were loving your devotional time, the time you had with God every day, and life changed. And now suddenly you can't seem to find your stride again. A few friends and I were talking at church a few weeks ago about this subject, about our devotional life, our time spent with God, and expectations versus reality. And how do we handle this? I've met many people, talked with many ladies through the years who struggle with this. Why am I not faithful? Sometimes, yes, there's a relationship issue between us and God. But sometimes it's because we're trying to fit ourselves into somebody else's box. We hear preaching on verses like Mark 135. And in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place and there prayed. And we think, well, Jesus got up early in the morning, and so I need to get up early in the morning and have my time with him. And some people struggle with that. I have a dear friend who years ago told me that she said, it doesn't matter what time of day my feet hit the ground. My brain doesn't wake up until at least 9 o'clock. That's when I start functioning at my peak. And she had heard preaching on getting up early and spending time with God. And she's sitting there with her Bible one day and thought, what am I doing? I'm giving God the garbage part of my day. This is the worst part of my day. Why am I giving God the worst part? Sometimes our struggle is because we're working against ourselves. A night owl is trying to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning, or you're trying to keep somebody else's schedule. Something that you heard preached on, maybe not even preached as in this is how you should do it, but as in this is how I do it. And we lose sight of not one of, the most important factor in our time with God. This is not a to-do list. It is not a set formula. It's a relationship. With every other relationship, people can share things that have helped them. They can say, here's what I did. They can give principles. But every relationship is not the same. If you are a night owl trying to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do your devotions, and you find yourself completely not focused and struggling, maybe shift. Change the time that you do it if you can. I'm naturally a morning person until my health suffers and I'm not sleeping well. Then I'm not necessarily a morning person anymore. So there are times now when I get up in the morning and have my first cup of coffee, move around a bit before I sit down with my Bible. That's not my ideal, but that's where I am now. Some days I get up and I'm good to go. Um, my husband's ideal time is in the middle of the day. At night, he's tired from the day's work, and in the morning, it's not his peak time. So he gets up and reads the news and has a cup of coffee and goes over to the office. Then, when he's awake, at some point, I mean, like mentally, like his brain is really kicking in gear good, then he gets into his Bible study and his Bible reading. We forget sometimes that this is not doing our devotions, or it's not supposed to be. It's giving God our devotion. It's a relationship. I use this analogy with students who've come over, intern students who've come over, and ladies that I counsel with who are struggling with this. Never forget its relationship. If I come in every morning, 5:30 in the morning, sit down with a cup of coffee across from my husband and say, okay, what do you want to say to me today? And here's what I need from you today. Oh, and thanks for taking out the garbage. Thank you for what you did here. I couldn't have done that without you. I really need your help with this. This has been great. I'll see you here in the morning. And that was the only conversation we had, unless I really needed him or unless he did something really amazing that got my attention. That's not a relationship. That's like a business partnership or something. It's not even that good. And yet, sometimes we fall into this with God. It is something that we do. At this time of the day, I get up, I read my Bible, I pray, I sing, whatever it is that you do. And none of these things are wrong as long as they are building your relationship with God, and that's the focus. The problem is when we struggle to fit into someone else's mold, or we forget that this is a relationship, not a formula for gaining God's favor. Nothing you do will ever make God love you any more or any less than he already does. I want you to think about that for a minute. Nothing you do will ever make God love you any more or any less than he already does. Why? We sometimes fall and think, well, if I don't do this, then no. Yes, our fellowship might suffer. We might miss blessings from God, but God loves you unconditionally. His love is not based on your performance. It's based on his character. It's based on his goodness. His love for you is based on his character, not your performance. So I want to encourage you to take time and spend with God that come away time by yourself. There's also other verses where Jesus came away, but they weren't all first thing in the morning while it was not yet day. In Matthew 14:23, and when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. This was after a day of ministry. This was because Jesus went to spend time with the Father, not because it was required, expected, but because he wanted to be there with him. He wanted to spend time with him. Sometimes we're doing great. We love the time that we spend with God, and then life changes. Maybe you get sick, and weakness and pain and brain fog and things like that change the dynamic. They change how easily it is for you to slip into focus and really get a hold of what God has for you. Sometimes your whole routine is thrown off. Maybe you're sitting in the hospital with a loved one. Maybe you're the one in the hospital. Sometimes it's something grand and glorious that changes. I remember when I got married, and I was used to getting up first thing in the morning and making coffee, sitting down at my desk with my Bible, and suddenly there's this other person in the house, and I need to make breakfast, and I need to do chores and things that I usually could have done whenever I wanted to. My husband was gracious, but there were things that we did together. And I had to adapt and adjust the timing and the flow. When life doesn't go along the way it has been, what do you do? How do you shift? I remember when I was in the worst of my health, and I would sit down to read, and I would read a verse or two or three and realize I had no idea what I'd just read. And I would go back and start again and realize I still didn't know what I had read. The brain fog was so intense. And I had to find ways to try to overcome that. And some days it was sitting down and listening. I still listen to the audio Bible while I'm reading a lot of the time. It helps a lot with my brain fog. It helps me be able to focus. There were some times when lack of sleep because of the pain and the sleep issues with Lyme disease and all of this, I couldn't sit and read or listen without falling asleep again or without just nodding off. And so I might walk and listen. And there are times when the schedule gets all messed up, maybe something, we get a call first thing in the morning and we're out the door because there's an emergency. Read in the car. Whatever we have to do, remembering that this is not whatever I have to do to get this chore done. It's whatever I have to do to spend time with God. And this is true of any relationship if you think about it. What do you do when you want to prioritize a relationship? You spend time with them. Yes, there's acts of service, there's gifts, there's little things to connect. The big thing is we spend time on purpose, intentional time. And yet, all throughout the day, we still continue to communicate. We talk when we're in the same room. We text back and forth or phone calls when we're apart. We just keep connected with those that we want to stay connected to. And we can do the same with God. Absolutely strive for that focused time where it's just you and God. And then keep in mind that, especially if you're a mom of a bunch of littles, keep in mind that you might not have an hour of uninterrupted time first thing in the morning without babies awake. You might have to just carve out time intentionally throughout your day. My mom tells about my grandmother. When life was getting heavy and she was struggling, she would say she was taking a walk. I'm going out to the woods. And Mom said she would watch her walk across the backyard and the field, looking like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. And she'd be gone for a while. And when she came back, she had a light step and she was singing as she came back across that same field and that yard. Why? She went and spent time with the one she loved. She didn't have an easy life, but she knew where to go when she needed help, when she needed comfort. And she loved God. I remember as a little girl, when we would go and stay with my grandparents, my grandfather was bedridden at this point. He'd had strokes and he couldn't speak, and they had a hospital bed in the living room, and she slept on the couch to be near him. And there were two couches in the living room, and we sometimes got to take turns with who slept on the other couch. And I loved it when it was my turn to sleep on the couch or when we were in the bedroom that was closest to the kitchen. Because every night when the house got quiet, my grandmother would hit her knees in the dining room and she would start praying. And she prayed for her pastor and family and missionaries, and she prayed for her family. She had 10 living children, loads of grandchildren, and she prayed for all of them by name. Now, my mom was the baby, and I was the next to the last. And it took a long time for her to get to my name. So it was always a challenge to stay awake and hear her pray for me by name. And there were times when it would get very quiet. And you listened and you waited. And in a minute or two, I'd hear her say, "I'm sorry, Lord. I was so tired I fell asleep." And she would pick back up where she was and she would continue praying. And that is a precious memory to me, because it was her time to pour out her heart to her Father and share with him the burdens, the loved one that was sick, the child who was facing decisions, or the weight of caring for her husband who couldn't care for himself anymore. The worry of a child or a grandchild who was traveling. And she just poured them all out to the Lord. And it was that relationship, but that wasn't all of it. You would hear her singing hymns when she sewed, when she cooked, when she was working around the house. And then watching my mother taught me more about this than anything. My mom's also a morning person, and I remember getting up when I was a child, and my mom would be sitting there with her Bible and a cup of coffee. And when I got older, there were times when I would get up and join her. And it showed me how she prioritized her relationship with God. And so set aside time where it's just you and God. You're focused, you're digging into His Word, you're memorizing, you're studying, you're reading through on a plan so that maybe you want to read through the whole Bible so that you get all of it. Whatever it is. There were times when I didn't make it through the Bible in a year or even two. I struggled. And there were days when I sat down and tried to read and I said, okay, God, I'm going to listen and I'm going to read until you give me something because I can't focus. And every time I do that, even in the middle of brain fog and struggling with health, God gives me something and grabs my attention and gives me something. It happened again just several days ago. I had a headache. I was hurting. I was sitting in my chair over here and I had my Bible and I was listening to the audio Bible. And I just said, I'm sorry, Lord, I'm struggling so bad. And I'm going to quit going back and trying to read it all over. I'm going to listen until you get my attention with something I can focus on. And in spite of the pain, in spite of the fatigue from a sleepless night, God got my attention in the middle of it. And I went back and reread those verses and had a sweet time with the Lord. So don't give up. Don't get discouraged if your time with God doesn't look like someone else's, because even in the days when you just have a little bit of time, maybe you can read a chapter here, a chapter there, a few verses here, a few verses there, and the little ones get up and wake you up, and the sick baby is crying, and your husband has to go into work extra early, or work calls you in extra early. Things happen. Do what you can to spend some time with God, and then just spend your day with Him. As you see something beautiful in nature, tell God how much you appreciate it. When you're struggling to get a chore done and it comes together, thank God for the strength and the help to do it. Asking for wisdom in the little things as well as the big things. Just carry on a running conversation with Him. That's what this Pray Without Ceasing is all about. Just spend the day with Him. You might be busy and you might struggle to sit down with quiet, focused time, but it doesn't mean you can't spend time with Him. Some of my best prayer times is washing dishes or riding or driving down the highway. My hands are busy. My mind is not fully engaged. It doesn't have to be in the task. Just spend time with God. Spend time with God and love Him and trust Him to give you something from His Word. It doesn't have to look like somebody else's. Just embrace and steward your relationship with God.